Welcome to the Business of Property podcast. I'm Stuart.
And I'm Simon.
And we're both property people running our own businesses, and this podcast is just us chatting, as we often do, about anything and everything property. And interestingly, we say anything and everything property, but we're going to start with something that's not property, but is related to investing, which is Simon's dabble in the world of crypto. And the last instalment wasn't great news, Simon. I think you'd lost the value of what you put in. So with bated breath, what's happening there?
Yeah, so I think, I'm not sure if it was actually in the last update, but certainly around that time, the value of my crypto investment had roughly halved. And I'm very pleased to report that it has regained that loss, and it is now worth roughly what I put into it. So yeah, woohoo, I haven't lost money.
How long ago did the investment start? What time period are we talking about?
I can't remember actually off the top of my head. I think it's something in the region of 2 to 3 months, something like that. So yeah, during that time, the crypto markets had a big drop in value, and my investment dropped with it. And since then, it's climbed back a little bit, and yeah, it's now worth just a few pounds more than I put in. So hopefully it's going to keep climbing, although it's actually down slightly today compared to yesterday. not that I'm looking every day. Definitely not. No,
obviously not.
So yeah, we shall see. Although you say it's not property related, I actually had a conversation with somebody this morning about blockchains and their potential use and disruption of the property markets. And I am very skeptical about this. But yes, maybe there will be at some point one day a link back from cryptocurrency and blockchains into the property world.
I'll take that tenuous link. Whether the listeners will take it is another matter.
I think it's good enough, at least for today. And yeah, we should move on. So I think in your update, Stuart, you're going to be talking about snagging.
Yeah, well, you shared a report with me that said that 2% of all new builds don't require snagging, when I think we both spat our coffees out of that one. I mean, in any other circles, saying something is you require it 98% of the time feels significant, but for anyone that's bought new builds before, to not have any snagging just doesn't feel possible to me. So obviously, quick one for those that haven't bought new builds. Snagging is exactly what snagging is you have a walk around the property, and you actually have this in other environments as well. We have this when if we're doing a refurb or an extension, we'll go around and we'll do a snag list. And essentially that is just the acceptance that when you're doing anything, particularly work that is involved with building, there's always going to be things that just don't come out right, haven't worked. And that could be the quality of the grout. It could be that a door has been incorrectly hanged. It could be scratches on the window, as my case. But what you have in new builds is you have a 7-day snag list, certainly for this house building company anyway. So you have a 7-day list, which is all the things obviously you notice in the first 7 days. And then you have a 30-day. And so that stat to just say that if you think that the house builders that we've got are building hundreds and hundreds of houses on one development, to have them build a house perfectly, I mean, if that happens, then it's going to be a good day. But to have it perfect would just seems beyond.
And perfect 2% of the time. I mean, that's 2 houses in every 100 that you build comes out absolutely perfectly. Not a single thing missing a bit of paint or a single issue throughout an entire house. I'm sorry, I don't believe that.
Well, as soon as you say the 2%, 2 out of 100, I immediately say, well, I want that one. Give me those 2.
Yeah, quite. I mean, when I went through the new build snagging process, it's quite a long time ago now. God dear, 13 years.
12, 13 years from that development.
Yeah, quite. So I'm going to be trying to dredge up some distant memories. But yeah, we had a long list. I mean, it didn't help that they rushed our completion through for various reasons that I think I've mentioned in past episodes and won't go into again. But it was a long list. And I think even a non-rushed completion will have a reasonable list of snags. And indeed, there are actually commercial companies that just come in and write snag lists for you. They will look round a property and they know the sorts of things that builders often miss and don't quite finish up. And they will write you a snag list that you can then take back to your builder and get them to fix everything. We didn't do that. We did it ourselves. And how about you, Stuart? Do you do this yourself?
Yes, I didn't get the butler to do this one. We decided to do our own list with Post-it notes. I was just thinking that the thing that I always recognise, so it's obviously a new build estate, and our street is a cul-de-sac. But what seems to have happened, just based on the fact that we're already communicating and have good relationships with the neighbours, is that the further down the cul-de-sac, so we're kind of like about 4 or 5 houses just from the last house. But as we speak to each neighbour, the snagging list seems to get more and more intense. And my kind of funny anecdotal view on that is that all of our houses were, funny enough, due to complete on the 30th of June with a certain stamp duty holiday. And I believe that there might have been a requirement of expediency as the people that were finishing off and doing the final bits of work had to do.
Where the time between starting to build the house and having to finish building the house got shorter.
Yeah.
Because you got further down the street, so they started those houses later. So yeah, they had less time to actually finish.
Yeah, and so you can just imagine that all the final fixes as they go down the road, just getting more and more urgent. And I have to say, my wife and I think we are definitely on the more relaxed side of the spectrum, where, to be honest, I've had to work really hard to write these things down. But of course, you think, as for anything you buy, whether it's a car or a toaster, actually, when you pay something for something, you expect it to be in the condition. And so, for example, as we've walked around the house, there were a couple of scratches on the window, and originally I wasn't overly concerned by them, but actually we started looking at them and we said to ourselves, well, if we just paid for our windows to be fitted, then would we be happy with this? And we said, no, we probably wouldn't. And so, okay, let's raise it as an issue. And interestingly, the guy that we had to walk around with said, well, if you can stand 3 meters away and not see it, then it's not really an issue, which we don't believe is an actual thing. We think that's just don't bore me with this one. So we have actually followed that one through. But we actually went round and my wife put Post-its near all of the issues. And what was good was that the house builder in this instance, and I don't know if they all do it, I'm guessing they might do, but is when they come back in to do the final snags and the touching up, even where you've caused some issues from moving in, like, dragging a wardrobe up the stairs, or if you've got a 4-year-old like me that has already decided to drag one of his toys along one of the hall walls, they will actually tidy that up for you because they're going around with the touch-up paint, and we'll do that. So that's actually quite a nice little touch, actually.
Yeah, our builders said the same thing, actually. They said they were quite happy to touch up marks and what have you from moving in. I mean, as it happens, they needed to mostly repaint after we moved in, not because we destroyed the house already, but because I hadn't painted it the first time. So yeah, that was a bit of a hollow gesture, really. But they did say it anyway, and yeah, I think they would. And on your window thing, I think, and certainly while we were deciding what should be a snag and what shouldn't, one of the questions we came up to ourselves was, while we can sort of stand it now, having noticed it, every time you walk past that window or that issue, you're going to notice it. And over months and years, you're going to keep noticing it, and it's going to keep bothering you, and you're going to keep thinking, well, that was there from the start. We could have had it fixed. And why the hell didn't we? Because it's just going to keep nagging and keep bothering. So yeah, that was one of the questions we asked ourselves: is it going to keep bothering us into the future? And if it is, then it does need to be fixed.
Yeah, and that's where you come to. It's like, well, let's just raise this now. And if they came back and said, because of the size and scale of the issue, we won't do anything, I consider it a first world issue, and hey ho, we move on. But yeah, there were a couple of things that absolutely did need addressing. So plasterboard ceilings, quite interesting, where they tack them into the ceilings. We had one that was already visible, was starting to drop through the ceiling. And funnily enough, we hadn't noticed it before until the neighbours said that they had it was quite prevalent in their house, so they had several. And again, this leads to my sort of conclusion that maybe that things were a bit rushed towards the end, because we've only had one so far that they had to cover over. But the other major things from us, I guess, were, well, the big thing was that the garden was sloping down and water was collecting on the very minimal patio. So that kind of needs addressing, which so far they've been quite amenable to. And they were the big things. I mean, the rest of it is just really scratches and marks where perhaps people haven't taken as much care to finish work that they should do. You know, drawers in the kitchen not having soft closers, whereas some did. You know, real basic stuff. I mean, the one is one of those, like you say, that once you've noticed it, if you don't address it there and then, it will always bug you. The one that I think about is that when you go into the kitchen dining area, there's two light switches, one for the kitchen area, one for the dining area, but they transposed them. So actually, when you went into the kitchen and switched what you assumed would be the kitchen light, it switched on the dining light. But of course, you just go to the switch on the right, and it does all that. That's only an inch. And that was one of those where I think, oh God, you know, do I really have to report on this? It's just such a silly thing. But it was one of those things that would just bug me. I mean, you get used to it. I've already had to get used to it. Now they've fixed. But it's a 2-minute fix, isn't it? You know, they just unscrew the thing, turn it around, and put it back on again. But it's little things like that I think will always come up in the snagging, which is why, to bring this back around, to have 2% that have zero, you know, unless they are put in for the CEO of Charles Church or whomever the building company is, I just can't imagine that would actually happen.
Yeah, quite. I mean, I liken it to building a software product, and the sort of snagging is sort of the user acceptance testing at the end. But you build a software product, you test it as you're developing it yourself as a developer. And then when you're working on larger projects, generally you'll then have a testing team, or perhaps you'll be pairing with another developer who will then do testing for you. And you may well have automated computer tests checking things. But still, after all this within team testing, it'll go out to the customer, and they will then look at it afresh, and they will find little issues with it, or maybe even big issues with it on some projects. And some of those might be things that they're sort of differences of opinion. So the customer's expecting something, and the specification and the developer's view created something slightly different. But most of the time, they are bugs. And you have all these layers to check things, and you still end up with some things that need fixing sort of at the last stage before going out and being considered finished. And indeed, in fact, in software, finished is often not really ever finished. I'm not sure that really applies to houses. But anyway, so even if you've got a very diligent painter, and then you've got a site manager who is also very diligent and walks around the house very carefully, they're not living in the house. They're not looking at these walls 24 hours a day. And they just won't spot everything. So there's always going to be things that need to go on a snagging list, that need to be fixed up once you're actually living in a property. 2%. No, don't believe it. Never.
No, exactly. And they are like bugs. The snags are like bugs. And, you know, it just reminded me of the other one, the front door. So again, someone might put the front door on, you get the site manager come through. He does his walk around, he's got his checklist, walks around, tick, 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 and out he goes. But the issue might not happen on the first door open and close. It might happen on the third, the fourth, or the fifth when someone's living in it. And that's why you have the 7-day and a 30-day thing. And, you know, we had the issue where actually the first week we moved in was a really nice sunny week. The front door expanded, and before you know it, the door's dropped, and we can't shut the front door properly. And that's a snag. And that's, you know, there's no blame attached to it. It's just what happened. Someone came in, and guess what? It took him like 5 minutes just to rehang the door, given the fact that, you know, there'd been a bit of living in the property, and some of these things happen, and that's just how it is. So,
yeah. Oh, I've got 2 good front door stories actually for our house. It's relating to snagging, of course. One of them, when we moved in, you could close our front door, and if you didn't lock it, you could just open it just with a handle from either the inside or the outside. And we sort of, well, this is lovely, and I'm sure this is a wonderfully trusting and trustable community that we're living in. But we're not actually sure about people being able to just walk up to our front door and walk into the house. we would quite like to to not have it opening from the outside, but at the same time, we would like to be able to open it from the inside if we wanted it out. We don't want to need a key. And we knew this was possible because the previous place we lived in was like this. And so you can get locks like this. And yeah, we went through several people trying to solve this, dismantling the door, dismantling the lock, turning things around. And I think 2, maybe 3 people had spent a few hours working on this and concluded, I'm really sorry, but we can't do this. It's just not possible with this lock and this door. And the site manager comes back and says, oh, right, no, of course you can do it. I can't remember whether it was him or whether he had to then go and get his sort of lock specialist. But yeah, then 5 minutes later it was solved.
Yeah, I was going to say, considering they're doing hundreds of those on that development, why that one would not be doable.
No, exactly. I mean, yeah, I can't imagine that everyone on this development has doors that can just be opened from the outside without a key. So yeah, I'm sure other people would have had the correct setup from the start and certainly after us. But yeah, it just goes to show that you just need to have the right knowledge, and having that right knowledge is often invaluable, because it was a 5-minute job that a couple of other people had wasted a couple of hours trying and failing to solve. Just needed the right knowledge. But yeah, the other front door snagging problem was, I mean, you know what the door looks like, Stuart, or you probably do, but I need to try and describe it for listeners. So we've got a front door that is encased in a sort of timber frame, which then has the brick around that. So the timber element of it, over time, while we're living here, a bit similar to your door sort of dropping as the temperatures changed and things, didn't fit properly. So we went back and forth and things with them, trying to work out how best to solve this and things. And over time, as it dried out and things, the sill at the bottom of the door actually developed a crack. So we said, right, this definitely no good. We need to get this fixed. They tried filling it and things, but it was one of these things where it was going to always bother us. So we said, no, you've got to actually fix this properly. And yeah, it was quite amazing. They took out this entire section of the front of our house in order to replace it around the door. I think that was necessary. I don't think there was any other way to do this, just to replace this cracked sill at the bottom. But yeah, it was just amazing seeing how it all fitted together and seeing a huge chunk of our house missing while they're working on it for a day. Yes, all worked and all sorted out in the end. We have a locking front door and it does still open, and we don't have a crack in the sill under it, so it's all good.
All's well that ends well, but to have the front of the house removed for a door seems quite excessive.
Yeah, and it wasn't even the whole thing. The thing that sort of was the ultimate thing that needed fixing was just a crack in the sill under the door. But yeah, you had to take out, I don't know, it was the size of 3 doors worth-ish on the front of the house.
And I'm just thinking for anyone listening around, how to go about the snagging. And I think the way we did it was, first of all, obviously we just kept an open pad in the middle of the kitchen, which was, we said to the kids, if anything happens, just come and write it down. And there were some simple things where I'm sure I could have fixed a couple of things, but I kind of just left them to run through. And it always helps with a guy that is paid to do it is actually super, super helpful. I mean, there were a couple of things where we needed door handles changing. And he actually said, I'm not sure they're going to keep making these door handles, so I'll leave you one, if you like, in a box, which I won't mention his name or anything, just in case that's not allowed. But that really helps when you've got people help. So I think just being able to have that list. And then what we did was that the major things, particularly up with the windows, we just started putting Post-it notes literally on the walls, on the windows. As awful as that was to look at for a couple of weeks, it just meant that we didn't lose sight of it. And my sort of final view is a bit like with your door. I think you do have to persist, and I think we will with the windows as well, because I do come back to that, where there is a huge part of me that says, just let it go. It's a window, and the scratch isn't huge. However, if it were brand new, it wouldn't be acceptable. And I think they've got people. It is
now, brand new. That's the point. It is.
Yeah, it is brand new. It is brand new. Exactly. Sorry, if it were, it is brand new. But if we had bought it just separately ourselves, just paid window fitters to do just the windows, that's how we'd approach it. So why wouldn't we do it? It's exactly the same as you say. And, they've got people, and we had issues with we've got granite work surface. It sounds very nice, but that's probably the one bit where we did spend a bit of extra money. We've kind of gone for the sort of standard.
That was the one thing we added as well, actually, to our kitchen.
Yeah, and it makes a difference.
Basically the same, except the granite worktop. Paid extra for the granite worktop. Yeah, don't regret that at all.
But again, there was a little scratch in there, maybe only an inch or so. And I think a lot of people might be like me, where they just go, "Oh, it's a little scratch." But then equally, you're like, "Hold on, this is the upgrade." So again, post-it nose goes down, and actually they do fix it. So I guess the thing is, don't let anything go. If you're uncomfortable or slightly unhappy with, put it down. And in certain situations, you do have to be quite forceful, like we are with the windows, saying, "Look, this isn't acceptable." And you might say that you can't see it from 3 meters, but that doesn't negate the fact that it exists. It's a bit like the tree falling down in the forest. No, just because we didn't hear it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's happened. It's there. So I think they're the key things, and just follow through.
Yeah, from a process point of view, I definitely recommend keep a list, write it down, put it in a spreadsheet, whatever your preference is, but keep a list and then walk around with them, show them, give them a copy of the list. Don't give them your only original copy. Make sure it's a duplicated copy. So you've got your own list that you can then double check afterwards, because there will be things that they then miss when they come back and snag. I mean, we did this. We made lists. We gave them a copy. They took it away. They brought it back and walked around the house and fixed things, supposedly. And then when we go around with the list to check them, they've missed odd ones here and there. And yeah, you have to follow up and double check. And make a list, stay organised, and double check.
And this is where we knew our guy was really good, because he took our list and walked around with our lists and put notes next to it. So some of the things he couldn't fix because they were sort of beyond his capability or knowledge. But he'd write notes next to it, which was just really good. So it was very good. But, I mean, any house builder worth its salt will have a process for that and have there is paperwork to fill in. I hate administration, but still made sure, even when the site manager would say, "Oh, just give me your list and I'll do that," but I still made sure that we'd submitted the actual lists on email to the house building company, because as nice as people are, and it might even be unintentional, but they'll forget conversations, things will happen, and you need to make sure that it's all been logged and you've got an audit trail for that.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't think anyone maliciously missed snags that we'd reported or anything like that. It's just people being rushed, or oversights, or forgetting, or getting interrupted, or whatever. Just normal, natural, everyday things. So it's just why you need to stay on top of it. Yes, and as you say, submit them officially, make sure that they are recorded. One thing that we did come up against sort of later on, as we noticed some things, is that they sort of said, well, actually, for that sort of thing, you needed to have reported it earlier. And now at this point, it's considered sort of wear and tear type thing, even though it had existed earlier, but we just hadn't noticed or hadn't got around to it. I think we had situations of both, actually. So there were the things where we weren't on top of things enough there, but it's important to do. I can't believe we spent about 20 minutes talking about snagging, Stuart.
Who knew it would be such an interesting subject to us? Well, it's interesting to us, and hopefully has been of some interesting use to the listeners out there. If it has, please do leave us a cheeky little rating and or a review. And as always, if there is anything we can pluck out that is of use from this episode, we'll put it in the show notes. We'll also put it on the businessofproperty.com. Other than that, we'll see you next week.